Hey, thank you for being here. This is a really exciting step that we've all been looking forward to, and really it's a credit to Alex Wilson, who just walked in, and Jason Cooper and Friends of the West River Trail for all they've been working on for almost 20 years with the West River Trail and connectivity. And we have this really exciting opportunity now to connect to Hinsdale, our neighbors, our brothers from another mother, and our neighbors across the river. So we're really excited about that. We have the benefit of Craig Della Penna here with us today, and Mike Kowalczyk from New Hampshire, our legislators. I'm going to just try, I'm talking fast because we got a lot to get through, and a couple people need to leave early. Betty Fry and Jason Cooper have organized this meeting. Thank you. I'm going to introduce Betty to say a couple thank yous, and then Jason will frame the meeting for us, and we'll get going.
All right. Thanks everyone for coming today on a work day on Friday, and who I really want to thank more than anything is our partners who really appreciate what we're trying to do with the Island Park. And that would be BCTV, who's always there for the community, and here they are videotaping it. So thank you, BCTV. Johnny, who really cares about this project, and the Brattleboro Food Co-op. And they gave us this room. There's food over here that they gave us as well. I'm going to particularly thank Julia, because she has done so much to bring awareness of this to everybody in the co-op here. And when I've come in to talk to them about taking care of this room and everything, everybody knows about it and everybody cares about it. And so that's really exciting. So I consider the co-op one of our partners. So thanks everybody for coming. Jason.
Okay. I'm Jason Cooper. I have been working with, so right now I'm on the board of Friends of the West River Trail and also of Friends of Island Park. Back in 2011, I was an early member of the Brattleboro Energy Committee when they first started. And as we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do first, one of the projects that came up was creating trails that everyone could enjoy, that did not use energy and was good for health and the community and so forth. So we began exploring the West River Railroad Trail, which was out there but not being used. And over the years, we were able to learn more about it, to build that out and create this amazing trail amenity. And part of our goal for that trail has always been to be able to connect that trail into downtown Brattleboro and to link it further from downtown Brattleboro over the Fort Hill Bridge, which ties into a trail network in New Hampshire that is 82 miles of trails that are just 1 mile from downtown. So that has always been our goal. Unfortunately, the oil company that has a piece of land between the river and the railroad has always in the past said, no, we're not interested. The oil company just traded hands, and we approached the new owner whose response was, I think that's a great idea. So we immediately jumped in on that. We have a memorandum of understanding. We're putting together an easement right now with them. This past Tuesday, we had a presentation to the select board to request a right-of-way or an easement across the town property, which means across the depot land right at the edge of the riverbank. Then we go around the oil company, and then it becomes town land again from there all the way down to the old railroad bridge. Not only did they approve it unanimously, everyone who spoke there, from people in the public to people on the board, were very excited about this project happening. I believe that this will have a huge economic benefit as well as just an enhancement to our community. When we built this 3.5 mile piece of West River Trail that starts at the marina and goes to Rice Farm Road, we're now finding that more than 100 people a day are out there enjoying that. In any weather, you'll find people out there. In a blizzard, they'll be on skis. In rain, they'll be out there walking their dogs. In sunny days, the place is almost crowded. So many people are out there enjoying it. This is what people want in a community. So now, as we're working on this next section, it starts right in the heart of downtown and ties into this 82-mile trail network. I think this is going to be a huge boon for people wanting to be in downtown, wanting to enjoy downtown, tourists coming in, whether they're coming in by car or coming in by train. That's the first thing they see. They're looking out over the river, they've got trails. Experience has shown that the trail communities significantly improve their tourism and their property values and their stores. As people come into town, they stay overnight, they buy dinners. It's a great benefit to the community, and it's a nice thing to have, as I already live here and I love riding and walking on these trails. So I just wanted to say that this is what led us up to this next stretch, which is this mile of trail. Our longer range goal is now to connect from the Whetstone Brook up the Connecticut River to the West River. This is a piece that's on railroad property, and one of the things we're talking about today is what we need to do to change in terms of state legislation to help make the railroads be more interested in working with us. It will make the statutes in the state more attractive for railroads to be able to work with us and have a rail with trail. Along with that, we have this brewing thing happening with the island and the bridges, and it looks like the direction headed now for the island and the bridges is that those bridges are going to be renovated, and that will be turned into recreation space, which is an exciting next step. That means this island, and right in the center of downtown Brattleboro, becomes a connection of 4 trails. We have the Whetstone Walkway that comes down through the co-op parking lot. We have the West River Trail, which we would like to tie in. We have the Fort Hill Trail coming up. We have the islands that will go across to the Mount Wantastic trails. So as a recreation hub, people can put their bicycles on the Amtrak, come right into town, spend the night here, and go off and ride in all kinds of different directions. That's going to be a benefit for all of us, and I'm excited about this happening. I'm going to turn this over to Craig to tell you how we're going to do it.
Let me just finish putting my contact information here.
Okay, then let me say one other thing. There is another piece of this, which is Hinsdale has been hesitant about the island because it's kind of way off to the north from them. It's not really part of their community, whereas it's right in the heart of our community. And they're concerned about these aging bridges, and they don't want to be responsible for them particularly, whereas it's more of a benefit to us. So we are talking about the possibility of being able to redraw the state lines so that the island will now be in Vermont. Upon doing that, we take responsibility for it. And Hinsdale doesn't have to. Right now, if there's an emergency call out on the island, we can't go out there. The police can't go out there. Emergency services doesn't want to go out there because that's town-based and that's crossing into the other state. So it gets complicated. If that becomes Vermont, then it's easy. Everything falls into place there. The other thing is that when the new bridge was contracted to be built, they included $10 million for the purpose of renovating these bridges as historic structures. So there's money there which will bring those buildings back, bring those bridges back to life and make them so they should not need any maintenance for maybe as much as the next 50 years. The problem that New Hampshire has is if they tear them down, which was one idea, they forfeit the money that was given for renovating them, and they would have to pay for the demolition themselves. So suddenly there is a large incentive for them to want to restore them. So anyway, that's the last piece. So Craig.
Close. Jason.
Great intro.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to this meeting for the last 20 years. I've been...
Sorry it took so long to put it together.
Well, the stars have finally aligned. I'm patient. I've been doing this work for 30 years.
Thank you.
I'm a battle-hardened veteran of every rail-to-trail war in the Northeast. I used to market rail freight, plan the startup of big transloading operations, and I was invited to write a series of books about this new-fangled thing. We're taking the old dead railroad and making them into linear parks. That was in February of '94. The first book came out in '95. I have a back, that was one of my old customers when I was with Sarasman. I was only about railroad history. And then there was a guy buying my first book by the case in Eastern Mass. We had to meet up with him, and he was a major donor to Rails to Trails Conservancy. But it turns out that one of the people who got that first book free was a guy involved with a newfangled idea, what known as today as the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, North-South Trail from Lowell to Framingham, just outside of Boston. Terrific fights all the way, neighbors ferociously opposed. He just passed away a month ago. And I spoke at his memorial service at Park in Sudbury, Massachusetts. And I said, how many people here, there was 250 people there, how many people here have heard of the concept of 3 stages of truth? And how about here? Have anybody here heard of that? The first stage of truth of your, whatever that newfangled idea is, people will scoff at that. That'll never happen. The second stage is become hard-bitten dead-enders, fighting tenaciously against it. Third stage of truth, who could be opposed to that? And that's what you all do. You all are in the third stage of truth. Now, I was a lobbyist in 6 states. I worked for Rails to Trails Conservancy after I was hired by them because I was only about the history. Then I evolved into be about the politics and people being opposed to the trail. I couldn't imagine it. And I have a big tie-in to New Hampshire here because it was April 2001. I was the keynote speaker. I was the guy who flunked out of high school speech class because I was so shy. But then I found my voice. This is my subject. In April of 2001, I got beaten up figuratively by people in Swansea who did not want that trail to be built. And they hit me with a shotgun blast of reasons why they couldn't or shouldn't. Their town didn't want that trail. And you don't live near one, so don't tell us what to do. So that night, I got off the highway coming back home, zigging and zagging through a neighborhood in Northampton. We bought the worst house in the neighborhood. We transformed it into a bed and breakfast. Our renovation was featured on Home and Garden television. Now when I go into pressure-packed meetings, I say, I hear your fear. I live 8 feet from one of the oldest municipally built rail trails in New England. And we operate a bed and breakfast there. I'll give you a complimentary weeknight stay so you can wake up to the laughter of children biking to school in your town. And so that's how we ended up there. How many people here, anybody remember Craig Weed from Hinsdale, New Hampshire? It was a generation ago. He owned the railroad station in Hinsdale, it's on top of Depot Street. One of the few railroad stations in New England that is built on top of a hill. Very unusual. What I do now, I actually reassemble the longest dead railroad corridor in New England, Boston to Northampton, the one that said, you can't be doing that. Well, we're at 75 miles open right now, and DOT is right now costing up how much it's going to cost to finish the trail. There's 3 bridges over 500 or 600 feet long. There's a 1,000-foot tunnel. We are going to get this done. So, here we go. Let me get this. Is this working?
I think it's pointed at the, not at the screen.
It doesn't work on TV. That's okay. This is an infographic I put together about the north-south trail here. 4 bridges over the, I should probably sit down so you can see. A 3-state walking trail. You know the bridges here and the concept here, but there's a 4th bridge in Northfield that I was involved with called Friends of Shell Bridge. This is the 4th bridge down there. Once this whole network gets built out, this will be a tri-state trail. There'll be people coming here with bikes on their Amtrak. Amtrak will assign a passenger or a car, a baggage car for bikes. This is going to be big. Who am I? This, everywhere on this presentation, I'm going to blast through this. We have room for other speakers and time here. but there's a URL at the bottom of certain pages. At the last page will be a list of all of them. I'm gonna put this up on one of my websites, and I'll let you all know about this, because there's detailed stuff, the unglamorous policy behind the scenes work that needs to be done. And here's your three stages of truth. You're not inventing the wheel here. Here's a story from 15 years ago in the Bloomberg magazine or newspaper, e-newsletter. The bright future of the pedestrian bridge. These are everywhere. Red states, blue states, they all love their dead railroad bridges converted to bike and hike trails. This is a concise plan. Some of it's obsolete already. I've learned a few things here in the last week that some of these things. And so there's 5 things on the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things there. And you don't have to learn it all right now because it's going to be, you need to build more rail with trail projects. Back in the late 90s, I was on the team that wrote the first rail with trail policy guidebook for the Federal Railroad Administration, the Federal Highway Administration, partnering together because they saw that this was starting to happen. There was like 50 across the country. Now there are 400. In Maine, there was an effort to develop that rail with trail at the state level to change the recreational use statutes. All states have rec use statutes, and you have to update them to name out railroads, utilities as owners of land that might be useful for recreational uses. And in Maine, there was the senior vice president from Guilford Rail that later became Pan Am Rail, the old B&M Railroad, at a meeting at the state Maine Railroad Lobbyist Association. They met in his house. I was notified before the meeting and after meeting what was discussed, and I would weigh in with how to tweak things. That got done, and also including the concept of utilities, because the Unitil, a utility gas pipeline in southern Maine, wanted to be included into the rec use statutes. They wanted no liability, and it had to be called out in the state regulations. And so this is going to lead you to all this stuff. This is a website, one page of a website I have, and it says examples of setbacks with rails with trails in Massachusetts. And it goes beyond Massachusetts. One of my board members for my cross-state trail group went into the Genesee and Wyoming Company, the world's largest aggregator of short-line railroads. And I used to work for the short-line railroad industry. That's your railroad that passes through town here. Used to be the old cute Central Vermont Railroad, then New England Central Railroad. Now it's a subsidiary of Genesee and Wyoming, and they're like minions and rail with trail. We don't allow that. Brr, wrong. They do. And on that dark gray box there, you click on that. My guy Ben Bays, who does deep dives on stuff, he's found 2 Genesee and Wyoming railroads that allow rail with trail. I'm not saying that your contacts are liars. I'm saying they're part of the silo system that Genesee and Wyoming Railroad has. There's silos. If there's a mega disaster on one of those railroads, none of the other railroads knows anybody over there, and the other ones, they don't know anything what they do. So it's like, that one's gone, we're continuing on. This is the real deal. Develop a way for bridges to be owned by the state of Vermont. I'm not a lawyer. Though I put together teams of lawyers, I heard cats to write amicus briefs on cases where we need to win. There's sophisticated opposition out there, and I'm in the background ensuring they lose at high-level court cases. I'll let lawyers do their work. Number 3, regional planning agencies. Each organization will, I want to have you're not inventing the wheel here in this. In New England, we don't play well across the borders. We don't have robust counties. We don't have normal ways where we communicate across boundaries. A big river, that's a big boundary. All right, so it doesn't surprise me that there's no collab. We need to build a tri-state group. Because if we're going to build this, it's not just merely about building the bridges and the trail connections, it's about the marketing. The marketing of this as a tri-state trail project will make it worthwhile. And I'll get deeper into this. But I want the Rotary clubs, all the civic organizations, all the chambers of commerce, tourism bureaus, everybody meeting every couple of months under this heading to talk about what's going on, how do they need to keep up to date, to work cross borders. This is continuing on that. Pick a name for a not-profit. This is, if it's going to be Friends of Island Park, that's fine. If that's a 501c3, make that the umbrella organization to be able to have major league funders. In Massachusetts, we build trails. There's a 10 years ago, Charlie Baker's administration forced 3 state agencies to meet inside his suite of offices, to partner together, to meet every 2 weeks inside the governor's suite of offices, to take down silos between those agencies. And they've accelerated everything in trail development in Massachusetts. Where I live in the Florence village of Northampton, within 150 miles of us there, taking in southern Vermont, eastern New York, southern New Hampshire, all southern New England. This is the densest network of dead steam railroad corridor in North America. I'm not talking about trolley corridors. I do a deep dive on things. Trolley corridor is a very flimsy title. But more people rode trolleys than steam railroads. Steam railroads are meant for freight. It's an outlier to be putting people on them. And here we are to be something edgy. Amtrak is a piece of junk, imposter railroad operating on other people's tracks. That's the common thread inside the railroad industry. The freight railroads are in charge of dispatch. What could go wrong? And oh, by the way, it's beholden to the whims of Congress for funding. What could go wrong there? We need to remake the railroads, and I won't get into that today, but maybe another time. But nonetheless, there is something bad going on here that's about to happen. I want to hire a consultant about what needs to get done here. There are different levels of consultants. In New York in 2014, they did a report, Parks Trails New York, a mini Rails to Trails conservancy based in New York, only about New York stuff, commissioned a report about that Erie Canal Trail, Buffalo to Albany, 300-ish miles. What's it producing for the state of New York? It's only 3/4 built, but what's it producing now? Well, when the report came out, it showed that it was $250 million a year. Only 3/4 built. That was so stunning to the governor of New York, he ordered DOT to build 400 more miles of this techno jargon called shared use paths from Manhattan to Canada. At Albany, turn left and go to Buffalo. Finish it all. They did it. That was so stunning, it got done by 2018, 2017. When I saw this getting underway, I stood up because I was involved in 4 wars in Eastern Mass where neighborhoods were fighting the trail. And my battle-hardened veterans were wanting to quit and do something less dramatic and controversial. I said, no, you can't quit. I'll stand up an e-newsletter. I'll hire an assistant. We'll run a Google search of every story at every newspaper in the United States, looking for stories about rail trails, bike paths, greenways, whatever, that has kept them in the game. 18 months in from that launch, that is in the top 10% worldwide of all of Constant Contact's e-newsletters. It's like a tiger by the tail. I couldn't begin to shut that down. Is anybody here getting that? I know, Michael, you are, right? because you're a geek like me.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, it has transformed things. When Charlie Baker's administration saw what was going on in New York, they didn't have the courage to just steamroll things forward. They wanted to take down the silos, bring more money in, have lots of conversations and hand-wringing. And now, during the COVID, Mass DOT did a study. Could this 100-mile trail being finished, could it actually be finished? You can pass these.
Okay.
When it started, no, it was never thought of as a big thing. I'll take questions later. But what happened was they commissioned a report to see if it could actually be finished. Yes, it can, but it'll be expensive. There's big bridges missing. Oh my God, hand-wringing begins. And so they said to me, we're at a junction, railroad jargon. The left fork will take us to a costing report. How much is it going to cost to finish? That's going to be a big number. Or how much is it going to be worth if it gets done? And never ever in New England's history, including in Connecticut, which has the best trail census data of their network of trails of any state in the country, that no one has ever done a report about how much it's worth, except that thing in New York. So in New England, when DOT said to me, we're not taking on that costing report, we want you to use your 501c3 to tell us what it's going to be worth. And then we'll cost it up. I said, deal's on. I raised $75,000 in 20 minutes. That's right. That's the real world. When I worked for Rails for Trails Conservancy, I kept the major donors in the groove. I kept them inspired to keep on giving. I raised $75,000 in 20 minutes to pull together a report about what the hell is this thing worth. With 18 intersecting trails, there is nothing else like this in North America. With population densities, with people loving to come to New England, our cutesy antique places, not piece of junk places in the desert or Florida or Texas where they build 1,000-unit subdivisions where everything looks alike. People come to our bed and breakfast from all over the world and they're stunned to go into a downtown when they step off the into a crosswalk from a sidewalk, traffic screeches to a halt. In my day job now, I'm a realtor. I'm the first realtor in the United States specializing in houses and trails. DOT challenged me to do this, so we did. The winner of our request for proposals we sent out across the country, the winner was a company called Kittleson out of Portland, Oregon. They had a sub-consultant on there that I saw and I said, oh, that's it. The reason you have passenger rail here, again, don't forget, I do a deep dive in the background of everything transportation related. It was in the Great Recession when three red states, gave back money. They don't want money for rail restoration projects. We want highway money. Take your stinking money back. And so it went back to the Federal Department of Transportation. Some of it came to us here in Western New England to put class 4 track, that is 70-mile-an-hour train tracks that can sustain heavy-duty steam railroad corridor passenger trains. And so we have that now. And it's been, now in Western Mass, we have commuter rail with stops in Greenfield, Northampton, Holyoke, Springfield, connecting with Connecticut DOT at Springfield to go all the way down to New York City. That's why you have passenger rail here, because there was plans afoot that were sitting on a shelf, plans that sit on the shelf gathering dust. One day somebody will pull that plan off, blow the dust off of it, and make it real. Proper prior planning. And so that's how you got passenger rail back here. The guy who did that report showing that it was a winner or a loser in terms of all that public money being spent on frivolous rail restoration project, well, this guy has a niche practice for consulting. He tells DOTs or whoever, big state capital projects, is that a winner or a loser? Or with an Eastern Mass accent, is it a winner or a loser? We have to say that so they understand that.
5 more minutes, Craig?
Yes. And so here's the 3 reports. The red one is the one about Erie Canal Trail. The bottom right one is the one we produced about what that east-west trail is going to be worth. The one in the upper right is a new one. It's not out yet. It's days away from launching. When DOT told me they were going to cost up the report there, is it worth it? Well, they're about 2 weeks away. We have this north-south trail, that upper right one, the little yellowish, New Haven to Northampton. What the hell's that worth? Well, I know the number is going to be around $140 million a year. The lower right one is $212 million a year, each and every year. It might be $150 million to finish that east-west trail, but if it's worth $200+ million a year, that's a winner. Here's my ending slide. These are the URLs there. You can take a picture of this. I will have it up online shortly. But it's very important for you to have this organization that has an umbrella 501c3 to be able to have a consensus with all the movers and shakers in your communities. This isn't just about walkers or bikers. This is about the whole community. To have this thing and have that commission, that report commissioned about what this is going to be worth. It's never been done before in northern New England. We're the first ones in southern New England, twice now. A northern New England one here, including the Shell Bridge. And actually there will be rail with trail from Northampton up to like Deerfield area, or maybe all the way to Greenfield, all right? We are knitting together the densest network of dead steam railroad corridor. This is very electrifying. This is very electrifying. And so when I talk about this, it puts light bulbs on over people's heads. I see all the light bulbs pop up. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna just put that back.
Yeah, why don't we take some questions right away, and then we're gonna segue to Mike to talk about how New Hampshire's southwest corner ties into all this, and then come back to Jason and Alex if they have anything to add about connecting over here. Jason covered a lot of the ground, I think, in your intro, and with Julia Ferrari is here to talk about the 7 to Save too, and we're going to show the short video that New Hampshire Preservation Alliance, New Hampshire Preservation Alliance put together. So Prudence had a question.
Thank you. So in terms of the legislative changes that might be needed in Vermont, are those just requirements of the railroad, or is there a way to try to get them to be more, a little bit easier to work with and so on?
No, we're waiting 25 years. The railroads know that there are rail with trail projects, and Vermont Agency of Transportation knows that too. They've never advanced this. And I got the legislative modules for working up this legislation from Massachusetts and the experience in Maine delivered to you on that website. There's lots of resources. I don't show the whole page, but there's a lot of information on it.
I guess I'm wondering, is there any angle that makes this attractive to the railroads besides you gotta do it because we passed this law?
Yes, they don't want to get sued. Once the reuse statutes get passed, then they like it. They will never say to you, oh, by the way, this is what you should do. They're not going to do that. Railroads are not like standard companies. I worked for the first short line railroad in the United States, and it started in the 1930s. And they operate a little differently. I don't want to get a deep dive here on that, but they will not offer up, you should make the right.
No, they're very difficult to work with.
That's right. That's right. And on that site is going to be a lot of eye-awakening stuff for you. Yes?
Thank you for this. What is the relationship that we should have with the governors in these 3 states? What is their role in this? Can they be leaders?
Not on this. Well, they might. I never say never, but I don't see that happening from Massachusetts.
Okay.
They're really, they're not on board yet in terms of having a governor showing up at a ribbon cutting. They don't show up at ribbon cuttings for this stuff. They don't. There will be top-level agencies.
Especially if it's in Western Mass?
Well, that might be part of it. You know, I think when the Shell Bridge gets redone and becomes a state park, there will be high-level people there. But I don't want to make them paint a bad picture, but the politics of their handlers are saying, no, this is too controversial still. Even though it was a jarring thing to see what that East-West Trail report produced. That was jarring to them. They never, ever expected that. And so they're on board, but they're not quite there to show up at ribbon cuttings.
Craig, is there a time frame on the Shell Bridge work?
I'd say 2 years
Did that start or is that finish?
to finish.
Excellent. Okay.
That's an optimistic view, but it happened because of the Keene North Bridge. When I was at the ribbon cutting, I mentioned to everybody in Keene, oh, look at that. That looks just like the Shell Bridge. And it was because one of the consulting firms who was affiliated with the Shell Bridge project got called to put a new bridge over Route 12 in downtown Keene. Made it look just like the Shell Bridge. When we put that in the newsletter, it went out to Mass DOT. The guy, head of Mass DOT District 2, saw that and went, he went up there and he, brilliant. We can replace the Shell Bridge at half the cost of what rebuilding the bridge would cost. And so that's how it switched. And then they had a series of meetings about designing a bridge, picking the bridge they wanted. The community wanted the most glamorous, the most expensive one. We then go into COVID, prices escalate, and it became a $60 million bridge. So now they're realizing that's not gonna happen, and so they're gonna get a more affordable one, but it's not about the bridge viewed from afar. It's about the view from the bridge of the river and the experience of being on the bridge. And so the people are realizing that now. And so there'll be a more affordable bridge. Everything's in place. They just got to pick the bridge and get it going. The money's in place. The money's in place.
Wendy had a question.
Or just a couple of comments, and I'll keep it brief now because we'll be talking. Thank you so much for being here. You're here at a great time. I'm in the Senate and I serve on the Transportation Committee. Molly, who was here and will, she has another meeting to go to. She serves on the Transportation Committee in the House. Our governor actually has shown that he does like the Lamoille Trail. You're probably familiar with that. It doesn't obviously have active, we'll be talking a lot. It doesn't have active train service now, but he likes it and he's publicly shown that. So that's a good thing. We have Amtrak. We have a new station that's going to be opening I think in February. So that's going to bring a lot of attention to this area. The controversy has brought attention. It was really ready to just go without any controversy. That has, I think we can make that a positive so that more people know about it.
Yes.
The economic benefits, we definitely need to show those because that gets everyone's attention.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in other states where
Show
things
me
you
the
wouldn't
numbers.
think, like historic preservation. And folks just love coming up here, and they love our scale. And just one little personal thing, years ago, we brought our kids up here because their grandparents were here, and my daughter actually said, "Mom, people stop when you walk in the road," and she was probably 7, so kids notice that, and it's remarkable and wonderful, and we need to treasure it too, just as folks who live here. And we just need to know how special it is. So and going to Northampton and seeing Rail with Trail and asking about that here, and they say, oh no, we don't do that. I'm very excited about the legislation,
Yes.
and this is seriously the perfect time to start getting something drafted.
I'm very excited to be here. The railroad company I owned, they were the last real railroad. There are pretend railroads and there are real railroads. The last real railroad to operate that Lamoille Valley line was our company.
Interesting.
And I was invited to write an op-ed piece in the Hardwick, Vermont newspaper in November of 2003, a 2,000-word piece, and I could send you a link to that. It's
Sure.
online still, that swung it around. They were still talking about restoring rail service. And I pointed out in 2,000 words why that is a stupid idea, why it didn't work. As someone who knows how to make a railroad work, I'm not in favor of creating pretend railroads. That is to say, state-owned corridors that have third-party contractors operating trains on it. That is a step away from, just delays the inevitable abandonment. Railroads in the 19th century were wealth-creating devices. 20th century, they're blight-maintaining devices.
And half of our railroads in this state are owned by the state.
I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Because the Vermont rail systems is right now, I'm not getting, it's your southern Vermont, there's a problem creating across the top of Vermont right now, going into New Hampshire. That's partially because of that private sector, state partnership there.
Yeah.
And, yes.
Question from Oscar.
Yeah, a couple quick things. Thank you. This is an amazing presentation, and I think even to start the conversation, the existence of these studies in other places will be useful to at least some evidence of the concept that this is an economic opportunity. For doing a study of our own, Craig, do you have any sense of the ballpark of the cost and the timeline?
$50,000,
Okay, and timeline, do you?
3 months.
Okay.
That's why I want to puff this up. This has got to be a big thing, cross-state thing. And I want to be able to get funders to be able to jump right in on this.
And I don't, yeah. I mean, that's a doable amount of money. We're probably past the deadline, but Northern Borders has that new grant for studying and planning. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of.
I'd rather not have it a subject of a grant request.
Okay.
I want it to be done privately funded with the country's best consultant on that. And just raise the money and let them have at it.
It's fine with me.
Not being tied to a state agency from one side of the river or the other.
Mhm.
I want it to be above the fray. Here's the facts.
Yeah, that would be great if we can swing that for sure. My other question, Wendy, does it seem reasonable to get something like this in for this session before the December deadline?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
It sounds like you have the language. Yes.
Great. Okay, this is exciting.
Great. Thank you, Craig. We all loved it. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
I've been waiting for this for years. Sometimes I lay awake at night waiting for this.
Yeah. So other than I imagine everybody in this room has enjoyed the West River Trail and has had at least that experience of being near the river in a peaceful environment. And flat, I've learned, is wonderful. As a young person, I used to scoff. And really, I wasn't hiking unless I was summiting. Now, and 60% of the people of outdoor recreation is walking. And we want to bring that access to our communities and to everybody. And to do that, you need to get it close, you need to get it free, and you need to get it flat. And these type of trails offer those three things in an amazing way. And while the existing ones may be a blight, their legacy is they go into downtowns. and they pass through downtowns. And so we can enjoy that as a region and as a community. And the area, if you haven't hiked the trails Mike's gonna tell us about, I encourage you to. They're amazing. They're doing such a wonderful job there over Monadnock, connecting to distant towns. And I'm pleased to introduce Mike to tell us about the Monadnock Region Rail Trail Collaborative.
Thanks a lot. I represent the Monadnock Region Rail Trail Collaborative. We formed a nonprofit back in 2018, and the idea was to look at all the rail trails in southwest New Hampshire. And there's the 82 miles that Jason mentioned, plus if you add the east side, which is Ringe, Jaffrey, Peterborough, it's like 110. So that's kind of our scope. But we've always wanted to connect to our neighbors, Brattleboro, Bellows Falls, and Winchendon, right? So we're trying to work on those as well because the network expands, right? Jason talked about what it means to connect on over here. If we connect to Winchendon, we can get to his Mass Central. It just grows, okay? So, I'll tell you what we're up to briefly. Josh Green's here, also from the town of Hinsdale, so I'm sure he'll have a couple comments. So we've been working on trails in our region, and when I talked to Brett the other day and to Josh about the bridge, because I'm interested in the trestle bridge, to get that opened, and Hinsdale was interested.
Absolutely.
Josh can speak to that. That got me going to get the Fort Hill Trail in New Hampshire reclaimed. We call it reclaiming, and what we mean by that is get the trail at a condition that the 6-year-old can ride a bike on it. And for us, it's hard pack, it's opened up, the drainage ditches work, the culverts work, that kind of thing. I fortunately have Cheshire County helping us. The grant manager for Cheshire County helps us write grants, so we have that resource. We also work with the towns like Josh and Hinsdale. We also work with snowmobile clubs. We try to work with anybody who's interested in trying to make the trails better. And we form teams, we define a project, and then we work to get that done, right? So I've committed to Josh, and I've talked to the county and the district officer for New Hampshire Snowmobile Association to write a grant this spring, so the Recreational Trails Program Grant, which is what it's called in New Hampshire. I think it's got different names in different states. I'm sure there's one in Vermont, the same thing there. That typically opens in March or April, has to be submitted by June, and if we in New Hampshire find out in September if we're awarded, and if we're awarded, the money becomes available the next June. So it's like a 2-year cycle. So we're planning to write one this spring for the Fort Hill Trail, and I want to start on the north end, which is where the bridge is, and work south. Because I have found if you get the trail done, people get excited, and they'll look and they'll say, what about the bridge? And we'll go, yeah, what about the bridge? Right? And it gets more people engaged and interested in asking questions and that type of thing. So that's kind of my plan. I guess I could let Josh talk about what they're thinking from the town in terms of the bridge itself.
Yeah, we had a discussion.
Josh, can you get you on camera?
Rather not? Okay. I'm Josh Green, the Community Development Coordinator for the town of Hinsdale. I'm also the Building Inspector, Health Code Officer, and Code Enforcement as well. I have a 3x5 business card. So we've been having bridge meetings about once a month with New Hampshire DOT, Brattleboro, Select Board, Potter, some Select Board members from Hinsdale, Catherine, and so forth. We had a pre-meeting before the 15th meeting, and we met at Brattleboro, and we met with Steve Fortier, who was with the BEA for New Hampshire. Chris Chapney was there. Max Beebe was there from HEDC. I was there. JB Mack was there. Chloe Gross was there with Southwest as well. And we had Chris Coates who's also in charge of the region. And we started talking about the twin bridges, which is always a sore subject. So we kind of switched to the trestle bridge at Fort Hill Bridge, and we all got really excited about it. So Hinsdale is definitely on board with this bridge. We actually were talking about sewer as well, maybe having some of the sewer line from Brattleboro come under the truss bridge into Hinsdale, which would help both communities out quite a bit. So then we had the bridge meeting the next day on the 15th, and that kind of ended the way normally all the meetings go as far as the twin bridges. But we did discuss some about the trestle bridge as well, the Fort Hill Bridge as well, and everybody once again got excited about that. So we're really excited about the Fort Hill Bridge, and we're definitely on board.
And what I'd like to mention is J.B. Mack is the Southwest Regional Planning Commission, if you guys really know him. They have submitted a Timber for Transit Northern Borders grant, and I submitted, as part of that, the Fort Hill Trestle Bridge to do the inspection of that bridge, because I'm told the first thing needs to be done, the bridge needs to be inspected, and I'm told the cost is around $100,000 to do that inspection. So that's part of this Timber for Transit
yeah.
grant application. So if that happens, then perhaps we can get the bridge inspected, which is like the first step.
Well, we were talking about that as well, that there is a rumor of some sort that maybe there was a full inspection done on the bridge back in the 90s. So I have contacted the DOT, Dave Rodrigue, and to see if they can search and look for this full inspection that maybe was done back in the 90s, because that would save us $100,000 and a lot of time.
Yep, so there's a possibility.
The guy who was in charge of Bureau of Trails back in the 90s in New Hampshire was Bob Sproul, and he left that in the mid-2000s, but he's still alive, and he's still doing something in New Hampshire, so
Maybe we can contact him.
Yeah.
he knows where it is. They had a full inventory of all the timbers needed. They were just waiting for Vermont to get the propane dealership aligned with the new bridge, new 119 bridge. They didn't want to have the Fort Hill Bridge open until that all sorted out, and it's all sorted out here on this side of the river now.
Yeah.
And so just got to find the pieces.
Yeah. Any questions? Yes.
Would an inspection from the 90s still be applicable now? I mean, that's good.
It might not. I talked to JB about it yesterday, and he said it'd be great to have, but we'd probably have to redo it anyway because it's been 30 years. So I'm not sure if it'll save us anything.
I have a question about the other bridge north of the twin bridges, the Harlan-Fisk Stone Bridge that goes over from the roundabout in Brattleboro over.
Oh, yes.
So that's a bridge that was just left. It's, used, people walk over it. I walk over it all the
Pedestrian,
time to
yeah.
access the Wantastica Trail from that way. But nobody ever talks about that bridge. It doesn't appear as if it's been maintained at all. There's questions raised by Hinsdale about the safety of these bridges, the twin bridges, which just a few months ago there was tractor trailer trucks going across them. So, from a safety perspective, they seem rather safe. But what about that other bridge that is unused? I mean, does Hinsdale think that's a problem, or, is there plan for renovating that?
I think
or-
that's Chesterfield.
That would be Chesterfield.
Yeah, that's
that
the
goes to
Chesterfield bridge.
but New Hampshire doesn't consider that an issue, that bridge is just kind of sitting there? Because that's also part of this network, obviously. If
Right.
we have a
I
recreational.
don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I don't really know much about that.
Probably
There's
since
no
it's
rail
not
trail up
close
there.
to the-
Right.
It's not the
And-
same kind of attractive nuisance that Hinsdale considers the twin bridges to be.
In my first slide, I had that vertically oriented antique map showing the four bridges. The four bridges in my realm have always been, including that bridge.
Right, yes.
I never thought of
Right.
the twin bridges here as two bridges, but that's what you guys are calling it, so I'm going with that. But I think that that northernmost bridge could be part of the network.
Yeah.
But You're in charge, you guys will figure it out.
Any other questions?
Well, let me just follow up on that, because I think it's really important to know that the condition of the Chesterfield Bridge is not the condition that the twin bridges would be in once they're rehabbed. Completely different situation.
Correct.
Okay, because that has been said to be an issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think right now, I think on the northern bridge, there's a deteriorating sidewalk that's
Well,
pretty much falling apart, I guess, so.
It's an eyesore.
well, it's
Yeah.
more than that. It's
Yeah.
my understanding, it was never rehabbed. So never rehabbed. It was just let to stay. And actually, it shows how strong those bridges are, even if you
Yes.
don't rehab them.
Yeah.
But it's a completely different situation than the twin bridges.
Well, I just raise it because.
No, I'm glad you raised it, because that's.
You know, when I
important.
rode my bike across and the police stopped me and I saw them arrest someone that was going, because this was after they put a chain across, the police officer from Hinsdale said, these bridges are unsafe. And my understanding is that these bridges are perfectly safe right now for pedestrians and bicycles. And it made me wonder if these bridges are being called unsafe, what about that Exit 3 bridge, which is very deteriorated?
And that's a good point too. Safety, you have to be really specific when you talk about safety. Obviously, the bridges, you're right, they were handling semis and they were in compliance. So they're structurally sound. One of the sidewalks, it's not really, it's a walkway. There were boards taken away from it, so there's a hole there. I don't know if that is what they mean by unsafe. I don't know, but they are, according to DOT, they are or were just months ago, weeks ago, able to handle car traffic and more importantly the semis. And I'll just talk a little bit more if that's all right. What is hard on bridges is salt and semis. Neither one of those things would be in existence if they were pedestrian and bicycle. So once they're rehabbed, which could happen immediately, once someone at DOT, at New Hampshire DOT, gets the specs, which it's not complicated, and gets the bids, they can get right on that, and then it won't need maintenance for decades. So even though the two states, Vermont and New Hampshire, are obligated to maintain that bridge, those bridges, once they are rehabbed, that maintenance is minimal. So that it's just really important that we all understand that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
any other
Okay.
That's
questions?
great, thanks, Wendy.
One comment I'd like to make on the rec use statute, New Hampshire, we just made a change about a year or two ago that limited the liability of the railroads, so we can do railroad trails. We got a few places around. So if you're interested, I could find that language in New Hampshire as well, unless you have it.
It's already on the website.
Okay, so you can get it off his website.
Perfect.
Yeah, we just did that a couple of years ago for the same reason, because the railroad's like, oh, no, we don't want to do this. So we changed it so they have limited liability.
Perfect. Thank you.
And there's lots of examples around the country. I mean, it's like 400 places where there's a railroad trail. So it's been done, yes.
I'm not sure who this question is for, but do we know if the $10 million allocated for the renovation of the bridges will cover the cost of renovating those bridges?
Yeah, it's actually just under 9, I believe.
Okay.
The concern we have right now is the New Hampshire DOT right now, their 10-year plan is $400 million in the hole.
Ah.
So they're looking, I think they have 88 projects right now in the 10-year plan. They're looking to cut 34. And they're looking to suspend, I think, 10 or 12 projects. So it's only going to leave about 39. So everything on the 10-year plan right now is technically pending. So
Wasn't
even
that
if
You
we
can only spend federal money though on the buy, it was used, yeah, anyway, that's
Yeah.
interesting, but, yeah.
Was that a federal grant?
It was a federal grant. It is on the 10-year plan though for the New Hampshire, so I don't know.
Probably most projects on the
10-year plan are
grants.
federally funded, yeah.
Don't know for sure the problem.
Just a quick follow-up on that. We've had a couple, this has come up directly a few times with the state of New Hampshire guys at the meetings we've been having, and they have said very clearly the money is still there, it hasn't been touched, it is available. And I believe that even the gates that were put up, New Hampshire DOT paid for that separately because the money for the rehab is for the rehab and is being, I think, pretty closely kept for that purpose.
Yeah.
So.
And let me just add one thing. In Vermont, our costs are going up each year because of inflation. I suspect that's the case in New Hampshire.
No, we don't.
I know, I'm a little. Yeah. So it would seem to me to be that New Hampshire would come out ahead the sooner this project is done, because it's only going to cost more in the future.
Yeah, well, it's the case with every project.
Yeah.
Yes, but I think we need to say that.
So another comment I have, it's more from a marketing perspective, which when I heard about the connection and the work Jason's doing got me excited. So this year in the Monadnock region, we created what we call this Rail Trail Challenge. And the idea was to get people aware of the trails, to attract people to the area for economic growth, and also make people more aware where the businesses are. So it's this online challenge that people can get online. They scan a QR code, gets on their phone, and it'll get them on every trail, and every participating business, they can check in, get their reward points, and if there aren't enough points, they can get their free t-shirt, that kind of thing. Well, my organization's not politically bound, right? So I'm thinking, God, if we can get across the river, let's expand it, right? Let's include Brattleboro, let's include the West River, right? I mean, let's keep going, and when I can get connected to Winchendon, going south, we can call it the Tri-State Challenge or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think it could be a great boom, and with the rails, Amtrak here, and the rail station, and get people out of New York City, I think it's just gonna be huge.
I agree.
So I'm gonna move us along a little
Yep.
bit, but a
Great.
comment, observation. You can sit. but-
Okay, thank you.
For Josh and Mike, I think there's growing awareness in studies like this, and just what did you say, 50 to 400 trails across the country like this. There's a lot more understanding. Hinsdale's doing, I assume it's related to your department too, but 3 videos to highlight the outdoor recreation resources of that beautiful town across the river. And they're doing that for economic development reasons. And everybody in Vermont appreciates that outdoors and our natural environment are points of distinction and assets for us. It's less convincing when you leave the mountains and sort of the Route 100 corridor or come off the resorts. Yet the recreation resources we have in the Connecticut River Valley, if you reorient and think of the island, say, as a hub, to Mike's Trail Networks, the river is actually a Connecticut River Paddlers Trail. The Words Trail ebbs through there as a literary cultural trail. There's all kinds of outdoor recreation economic benefits engine if we just recognize it, celebrate it, and like the videos Hinsdale's putting together, and I think Craig alluded to, you gotta market it. Building a trail that you don't tell anybody about, or having a beautiful town that nobody knows about, doesn't really drive economic prosperity. So we have a beautiful region. This bridge project could be a real distinguishing point of distinction, quality of life amenity, and economic driver. So I think all of this energy is very positive, and it should be part of a sort of more Vermont, New Hampshire shared. It's not just Mount Monadnock and Stratton.
That's right.
Yes.
Right in the middle, there's a shite ton to enjoy and be proud of and celebrate as, our assets and what we can share. So it's just really exciting, and I saw you leaving, but I just wanted to cite that you're doing the videos. I think that's awesome. Connecticut River is an asset we share, and love to celebrate it all together.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Just wanted to add in, Hinsdale has Pisgah State Park, which is an amazing place.
Yes.
Which is all part of the same thing we're talking about. It's really important, Hinsdale's resources, and Chesterfield connected to Pisgah, so.
And Wantastica.
And
Wantastica is wonderful hiking.
All part of the same network.
Yep. No, we're definitely on board, so let's just make it happen.
Did you see this video?
Yeah, I'd love it if you could stay.
I think I have,
for
yes.
3 minutes. You've seen it? Okay.
I believe, I think it was posted, it was about a couple minutes long or something.
3 minutes.
Yeah, I think I saw it.
It's online.
Well, thank you for coming, Josh.
Yes, thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
take
you.
care.
Good to see you.
Have a great day.
So, for those who come in since, hello Walter. Hi folks. Welcome. Julia Ferrari is our friend, member of Friends of Island Park from Asheville, New Hampshire, and she was the champion nominator of 7 to Save, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about that and introduce the video they put together about the bridges, the twin bridges, as I'm hearing. I always call them the existing bridges, which is just such a horrible name. I like twin. We're going to go with the twin bridges.
So,
I'm started.
I think they're gonna, we can start it in a moment, but I'm just gonna introduce it. 7 to Save is organized by the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance. They look at 7 places in New Hampshire that are endangered and are needing to be preserved. So their designation helps to at least reinforce the fact that these places are really important culturally and historically. So they send out word that they're looking to communities. They don't look themselves, they ask the communities to respond. And when I heard and read in the Commons that the project that was supposed to happen was now endangered because Hinsdale was talking about wanting to demolish it, I heard about this and decided it was time to nominate them. So that's, they did a wonderful video, so I think we'll watch that video.
And it's worth, Julia found this, Julia nominated it, and it won, and she did all of it, and we owe her probably at least a
Spanning the Connecticut River between Hinsdale, New Hampshire and Brattleboro, Vermont, the now closed Anna Hunt Marsh and Charles A. Dana Metal Truss bridges stand as remarkable survivors of early 20th century engineering. Crossing a small island in the river, they are 2 of only 4 remaining Parker High Truss bridges in New Hampshire, designed by engineer John Storrs. Altogether, only 45 metal truss bridges still exist in the entire state today, as compared to 92 statewide that were recorded in 1980. The bridges tell a powerful story of engineering achievement. John Storrs, who founded the firm Storrs & Storrs in Concord in 1905 with his son Edward, went on to design more bridges in New Hampshire than anyone else, according to historian James Garvin. By the time he retired in 1933, his work had transformed river crossings across the state. The Charles A. Dana Bridge, built in 1926 by Boston Bridge Works and designed by Storrs & Storrs, stretches 297 feet from Hinsdale to the island. It is the 3rd longest and 2nd oldest of its type in New Hampshire, an outstanding example of the Parker Truss design, perfectly suited to long spans and riveted steel connections. The Anna Hunt Marsh Bridge, built 6 years earlier in 1920, connects the island to Brattleboro. Designed by Storrs & Storrs and constructed by the United Construction Company of Albany, New York, and the American Bridge Company of Elmira, New York, its 339-foot span makes it the longest and the oldest of the 4 surviving Storrs-designed Parker trusses. Now more than a century old, the 2 bridges have been closed to automobile traffic with the opening of the Route 119 span, completed in 2024 after 3 decades of discussion and planning. Although Brattleboro and Hinsdale originally agreed to rehabilitate the bridges for public use, the Hinsdale Select Board now favors demolishing them. The challenges are large for this small town of 4,000 people. Nuisance activity on the island, capital and operating costs, and differences of perspectives between the New Hampshire and Vermont communities. Yet, these bridges are more than just aging infrastructure. They are part of a proposed greenway that would connect trails all the way to Mount Monadnock. Advocates see this as a win-win for preserving these rare resources while also supporting community and economic development in Hinsdale.
So, would you like to introduce yourselves? We all did intros
Yeah.
before.
Sure. Eileen Lange, this is Wayne Goodwin with the Swansea Preservation Society. And I met Julian on the steps of the town hall in Exeter. We nominated the Goldenrod Grange Hall to be on the Some to Save list, and we were also given that distinction.
Yeah, that's great.
Congratulations. We're kind of wondering if we could come up with some kind of alliance, but I hear you're already working on that. And if we could maybe join in and expand this a little bit?
Please.
Yeah.
Yes.
Steve Lindsay introduced the idea last night at a meeting and told us about your project.
And he told me about this meeting.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for coming. Yeah, no, I think we're all about the Southwest New Hampshire, Southeast Vermont, and finding a way to work together to
Absolutely.
elevate the hard projects. So
Yeah.
great to have you here. And Walter, do you want to just say hello?
I'm Walter Slinsky. I live in Brattleboro. I'm a bicyclist, and I love being outside and enhancing our green resources.
So I would like to just, I didn't ask you to prepare to talk, but just acknowledge Alex Wilson, the yin to the yang of Jason's West River Trail, to say a few things, maybe in terms of observations or where you're seeing from your years of championing.
And I need to mention, I've got a meeting in a few minutes.
do?
I need to
Okay.
leave
Okay.
in a few
Thanks.
minutes. It's great to see this group. I learned an incredible amount about the tri-state efforts, really exciting. So as Jason alluded to earlier, Friends of the West River Trail, which I'm involved with, has for years looked at the Fort Hill Bridge and strategies to get trail users down to there, which would provide motivation to deck over that bridge, which is a beautiful bridge and a quarter-mile in length as it crosses the river diagonally. And we were long blocked by Barrows and Fisher Oil Company, which wouldn't even talk with us about the idea of having a trail cross their property. But when that company was sold to Roberts Energy, we began to, look at, gosh, maybe there is an opportunity now. And it so happened that the president of Roberts Energy is the twin brother of the new program director at Retreat Farm, which I'm on the board of. So through him, I connected with Frank Roberts, and he was very welcoming for Jason and Steve Schreiner and I to come take a look. We walked the property with him, and he's very willing to provide a legally binding easement. It would be a revertible easement if the trail gets discontinued or Friends of the West River Trail disappears and a successor organization doesn't emerge. But anyway, he's very supportive. He sees the benefit to the town. As a new business owner in town, he wants to be part of the community. He had wanted to come to the select board meeting the other night when I presented this to the select board. He was out of town, but we're very excited about that. I have now a signed memorandum of understanding that kind of lays the framework for a legally binding easement. So it's full steam ahead. We've got a trail designer in place, Mark Westa, who's also part of our steering committee of Friends of the West River Trail. He's a landscape architect and has done trail design. So he's traveling right now, but when he gets back, he's gonna start scoping out the Roberts Energy property. Other than the Roberts Energy property, the rest of that trail corridor is going to be a piece of cake. It's easy to renovate into a usable trail as the lower section of the West River Trail was. It can be done mostly with volunteer efforts, bringing in some loads of SurePack for surfacing. I love that idea of designing a trail so that a 6-year-old can bike it. I've got a 6-year-old grandson that I biked on the Cheshire Rail Trail with this summer. But we're really excited, and it's a real breakthrough, the Roberts Energy connection, and hopefully we'll move quickly on this. We're expecting some permitting challenges dealing with wetlands, dealing with hazardous materials, adequate separation from site uses at Roberts Energy, truck traffic and whatnot. But I think those are all surmountable challenges, and we've committed to trying to create this trail without a cost to Brattleboro taxpayers, other than in-kind support through planning staff and whatnot, and maybe some permitting costs that would be waived. Brett? Yeah, that's all.
Okay. So I don't think I've had a chance to ask Jason, and so when it comes up beyond Roberts, you get to the extended parking for Amtrak, and then you get to Riverfront Park. And I'm just wondering if you would be willing to ask Mark and his design. Is he still at Stevens & Associates?
No.
No, okay.
He's independent.
Okay, so Stevens & Associates did a study back in the late 90s about the riverfront, back when there was a bunch of a garage and other businesses down there. And I think that informed some of the brownfield work. But the idea of the Bowmig design, which some of us have heard about, Bob Bowmig's design for a sculpture landscaping approach to the riverfront park, doesn't help us, can be compatible with a riverfront trail / river access there.
Yeah, I did reach out to Bob Stevens about this to see if they might provide pro bono engineering support. And they're pretty maxed out and understaffed, but he was supportive of the idea of being part of a community committee that can provide technical input to this process and share other work that he's done.
In terms of your thinking of contiguousness, you're happy to come in the back end of the parking lot and then sort of push your bike, ride your bike through to the north end of?
We'd like to keep it out of the parking area.
You would?
We want separation between the vehicles and the pedestrians. I walked that yesterday from the fence of the Roberts Oil property all the way up the bank to the Anna Hunt Bridge.
Yeah.
And there is a space that is right off the edge of the existing parking space. There's enough space for the trail before the drop off. And even as you get to the last little bit where that raised mounded covered area is, there is a step down a little bit before, so there is so just to the left, there is that flat step between the top of the mound and where it drops off to the river, where with a little bit of grading in there, we could be, just a little bit of that. We'd have an 8-foot wide. We might want some fencing along that because it is such a sharp drop off. And we don't want any of those 6-year-olds going for a swim.
So I think it would be really exciting to have 2 10x20 floating docks that I priced out almost a year ago. And there's a lot of but, which the three truths were very familiar to me about but. So but that's a brownfield, and but that's a steep bank. And but have you seen all the different places along this river, which I happen to have seen a lot of them. how the river is accessed with steps and walkways. And I don't know the answer to this, but as I understand it, it's at least 18 inches down to the membrane under here, which would suggest it's 18 inches over here, which would suggest there may be some, right now it's, what would you say, Jason, 5 feet? To 6 feet that's available here?
5 to 6 feet.
Yeah, so like,
And
there might be a way to do this and then put up a retaining, and you still protect they say you can't mess with a brownfield, but actually you can. There's just a process, and it happens all the time.
It has to be capped.
Right, and they're modified. So I guess I would love to see if this could be a really exciting part of the whole bridges complex and connecting the whole space.
I should add that Sue Fillion, the planning director in Brattleboro, who was very excited about this, asked if she could incorporate this trail idea, the pathway, the northern extension of it, into some grant writing she's doing, and incorporate that into the design. I said, absolutely, that would be what we're going to do. Anyway, I've got to run.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And congratulations on the win with the extension. Yeah, great. Thank you, Alex. So really, I think have we done all our speakers for today?
Well,
No, Betty?
Jason, have you continue on camera? Because I was going to ask Alex, but now he's going to talk to this group about the beginnings of the West River, and were there doubters back then? And,
yes.
And how did you get to the point where everybody's like, oh my God, the West River Trail is terrific? And I met a whole bunch of people during the literary festival that came from other states and knew about the West and loved it.
So starting at the beginning, Alex, I think back in either the late 80s or early 90s, saw that where that rail trail was, there was a piece of land that was coming on the market for sale. And that's what sparked him to start. He was the first one in this area to try and start working on that piece of the project. And they pulled together all kinds of people, from attorneys to surveyors to interested parties. And as Alex described it, people got so caught up in process that nothing happened, and it sort of died under its own weight. And he said people were just, they just were like, we're getting nowhere. And they had meeting after meeting after meeting. And so in 2011, when I came along with some other people in the Energy Committee, and someone said, well, why don't you look at that? That would be a good project. And I said, wow, great, I love the idea of trails. So I started working on that. And when I finally realized, made the connection that Alex had been part of a crew, and I reached out to him, and he said, oh, I'm so glad you're working on this. Here, take this box of pins that you've been on out of here. And he was like, he couldn't let go of it fast enough because he had all of this box of correspondence. And so we started, and I'm not a process person. I like to just do. So we're starting to talk about, well, who owns the land and what are the rights? And we looked up all the deeds, and we were talking about, okay, we have to reach out to the landowners and we have to get these right-of-ways or whatever. And I looking at the deeds, I said, wait a minute, the railroad is the entity that has these rights. And so it doesn't matter what the owners, abutters, whatever had, ex-owners, previous owners, if we don't get the railroads, right from this, then anyone could walk in later and say, no, you can't have this, is ours. So it turns out that the chain of title was that the railroad went out of business in 36, and in 1936, they when they went out and gave the whole railroad back to the state, the quarry in Guilford said, wait a minute, we're still using the railroad to ship our stone. And so they bought from the state the rights from the bridge over the West River into the center of Dummerston, which is no longer there. You can see the abutments from the gas station on Route 30. See those big abutments? So starting at the east side of the river down, they bought from the state that piece of railroad down into Brattleboro. And 2 years later, the hurricane of '38 came by and took the bridge out over the mouth of the West River, and they said, we're not in the business of building bridges, we quit. Well, '38, a salvage company came along, and because this was in the middle of a war effort, they came in and they bought the railroad from Quarry to take, and they came in and they took every single piece of track, rolling stock, and railroad spike, and whatever bridges were remaining. They took all the steel, disappeared, and that was the end of it. So when we're looking at this, and I said, well, this company has those rights, and we said, oh wow, 38, they probably don't even exist anymore. So, well, I did an internet search, and I found this company. They still exist. They're in New York City. So I just found their phone number, called them, and the guy answered the phone and says, hello. And I said, yeah, we're in Vermont. We have, understand you guys are the salvage company. You own the rights to this. We're a nonprofit group. We're trying to build a trail, and would you be interested in selling what you've got? Or making, transferring it to us somehow, because no matter what the rights are, you've got some, and we don't know what they are, but we'd like to get whatever rights you have. And he thought about it for a minute, and he said, sure. Wow. Okay. And I said, so how much do you want for 3.5 miles of rail? He said, give me $1,000. I said, $1,000. But me, I'm cheap. I said, well, we're just a group of volunteers, we're trying to put this together. And he said, make it 500. And I said, can I call you back? And I quickly sent out an email to everyone else. I said, I found the guy, and he's going to give us everything for $500. And somebody wrote back and said, that's great, we should have a meeting. So I called the guy right back, and I said, yeah, we'd like to do this. We're not sure what name we want it in, so we're just going to do it in the name of my company right now. And yes. And he said, okay, great. And I said, well, okay, so I should come down and meet with you. And he said, no. Just write up a deed, send it to me, I'll sign it, and send it back. And everything looks good, $7,500. Well, I've never done a real estate deal like that before. But I said, okay. So he did. We sent it, came back, sent the check, came back, and I walked into my house at the end of that day with this new deed, and I said, honey, guess what I just bought? And she said, get rid of it. So she said, liability, and no, nobody's been hurt there forever. But, so, we went through, we had our meeting, we transferred it, and we got that. And so that's how we ended up acquiring it. And then everything has moved along, and now from where, the process, and back when Alex started, they didn't, the neighbors were like, oh, most of the neighbors were like, no, we don't really want to do this, that's our land. And some of the neighbors were like, wow, that's great, we want to do it. And then with this, it got to the point, as Craig talks about, the different stages of acceptance, and now people want to be part of it. Now there's hundreds of people a day that are out there enjoying that, and people love it, and it brings people in from all over New England who, if they're coming anywhere near Brattleboro, say, hey, this really great trail network. And it is so rewarding to be out there working on that trail, because everybody who walks by says, thank you so much, we love this trail, and the feedback is fabulous. And so I'm even more excited about this piece in downtown, where it'll have an even higher profile, because everybody in town, it'll be right there at our doorsteps, and everyone who comes into town by train, this is, that's our front door.
So when you were on the committee for the bridge committee, as Prudence was on the committee, you got all excited about the two bridges.
Well, we've always had the idea to connect the West River into downtown, and then I've always thought, you cross to Wantastica and that trails and so forth throughout New Hampshire, and then if we can make the connection down to the Fort Hill, I've always envisioned this connection point. And then I don't know who brought the idea to me, the Connecticut River Trail, that all the people who travel that river, and it turns out that most of the places they can get off the river are nowhere near a downtown. This is one of the few towns along the Connecticut River where someone can get off the river, walk right into town, to the co-op, to the restaurants, to the movie theater, the hotel right here. And then another 1.5 or 2 miles south, there's a campground right there. So it's an incredible resource for the people on the river and an economic development benefit for us, for all those people to be able to come into town. So yes, as the more I think about this project and the more I envision what it can be, the more excited I get about it.
So are we a little surprised about this homeless thing that they keep throwing out? Was that part of the West River, this fear of homeless?
Well, when we first started working on the West River Trail and started, going out and clearing the brush back and stuff, there we found half a dozen homeless encampments and the associated piles of trash that were around them. There was even a dump. One of the landowners there found a nice little place right beside the railroad where there was a drop off. They'd filled in the level for the rail, and so there was this low spot, and he used it as a junkyard. He had an auto repair shop, and anything that he wanted to junk, he'd toss down in there. We ended up bringing in heavy equipment and pulled like 3 or 4 roll-offs of debris we pulled out of that trench. And we cleared up all the debris along the trail, and as soon as people started using that trail, it almost went elsewhere. And so it's one of the reasons why it's, in my mind, getting that bridge open and getting people out there, clearing back the brush, making it so there aren't places to hide, and make it so it's welcoming to people to be out there. The homeless will not want to be where all the public is going. They will tend to go away. The other thing we find is that people, I almost never find trash out on the West River Trail, because if anyone drops something, the next person along picks it up, and it doesn't stay there. I've seen piles of trash at the end where people have picked up trash and they leave it next to the kiosk because they're going to get on a bicycle or whatever, but not on the trail. And that will happen on the island as well. Craig, you've been trying to get a word in here.
I love your story about the pricing. That's a great story. I'll memorialize that. When I bought 3.5 miles of corridor to do bad things to make sure that DOT would never allow sale ever again, I paid $70,000, including one of the bridges was the last of its type still standing in New England. Here's more contemporary pricing. The CSX, they sold to the town of Natick 2.3 miles for $6 million and change. That was the tallest price ever paid for dead railroad corridor in the country until more recently, about 2 years ago, along the major Deegan Expressway on the north side of New York City, CSX had a 1.5 miles, sold for $11 million. Wow. So that's your full spectrum of pricing.
Yeah.
And the real estate department of the Boston and Maine Railroad back in the early 2000s sold outside of Hoosick Falls, New York, about 4 miles for like $40,000.
I'm glad you kept track of your major donors, Craig.
Mike, before you disappear, there's one, I want to pose a question, which is the discussion at one point talked about how the twin bridges, there's money set aside there, and the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to get to be. I wonder if there is a way to get a little bit of that money released, because I think part of the problem is, as you mentioned, Wendy, the walkway is not safe. And my understanding is, in terms of that walkway, to restore it to its original condition, they were going to get rid of the walkway. Right now, there are no pedestrian rails on the bridge itself. If it was possible to remove the walkway and just put railings on the bridge, that would make it so that it was pedestrian and bicyclist safe and friendly, because structurally it's fine. It's the fact that there are no railings and that the old walkway is unsafe. I wonder if it is possible to at least instigate or facilitate the state to take that first step in the shorter term. Well, things are less expensive. It's working towards the final restoration, but it makes it so that it was more practical to open it. So.
It's a solvable problem.
Yes. Yeah. Low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
One thing for everyone to think about.
I'll see you guys.
Thank you.
Mike,
Thank you very
Keep in touch.
Yeah.
Okay, sure thing.
One thing for people here to think about, one of, I would say, probably the two major concerns that Hinsdale's raised. One is sort of public safety on the island and the cost of their emergency response. The other is the long-term maintenance of the bridges, which hopefully will be minimal, but will be a thing. And at our last meeting, New Hampshire DOT says that when if/when they rehab the bridges, they will probably look to sell them. Not with any particular urgency, but they don't especially want to, there's no benefit to them to keep owning those bridges. So if there were people who were interested in, or a group that was interested in taking ownership of those bridges, A, that could be a thing that really moved this process along. And B, I don't know, I have no idea, but I suspect the price would be low to nominal, because that's something they would like to be free of. So something for this group to think about as another piece of the puzzle.
I think that's very doable.
Interesting.
Other question, Bob?
I tried to do a little research on this on the back of the envelope, but if somebody's smarter than I, what about interstate compact for the safety issues? I mean, certainly the things I found are like major things, like Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Obviously a big interstate compact. But can there be a smaller interstate compact just to deal with those issues?
I talked to the town manager about that, and what he said is that those still involve, even if they did that, Brattleboro would go on, they'd stabilize the situation, and then Hinsdale would have to come and pick it up and take it back. So it still involves Hinsdale. And the idea of either redrawing the state, primarily redrawing the state lines, makes it so that it's not a Hinsdale issue at all, which it shouldn't need to be for them to have to drive 5 or 6 miles to come up and deal with something that's right here. I mean, when they put up the new substation, it'll literally be 2 blocks from the police station here.
And let me just add to that, it is possible to have Brattleboro officers be certified for New Hampshire laws. That can be done. And so that's possible.
So let me give my 2 cents on where I think this stands right now. We've had 2 Brattleboro town, me and Isaac, or me and Amanda, and John Potter or Sue Fillion. We've had 2 in-person meetings in the last 2 months in Hinsdale. Josh has been there, who was here earlier, town manager, the select board chair was at the last one. And they're facilitated by the state of New Hampshire DOT. And nothing is settled yet. Clearly the towns have not reached any agreement. There's still a ways to go there. The state of New Hampshire has been taking a fairly strong position in those meetings that the environmental and historical agreements around the bridges are legally binding, could be potentially changed, but if for someone interested in demolishing the bridges, those agreements could be changed, but it would be a very lengthy, uncertain process, very difficult to achieve, particularly without Brattleboro's buy-in, which right now they wouldn't have. Also, the financial aspect of a federal grant which promised to rehab the bridges, and all the parties to that, both states, both towns, could be at financial risk if we demolish the bridges and then the federal government comes looking for its $9 million check. I feel like those arguments are beginning to persuade people, and I think I'm hopeful that soon we will actually move past the question of will the bridges be demolished or not, to a place of, well, yes, we are going to rehab them. If I had to, I think that's very plausible. And I hope that happens, and that would be a huge step. What remains after that is, in a world with rehabbed bridges, with some sort of public right-of-way across the island, there's still a really big spectrum of what that actually looks like, and that's where a compromise between the towns or moving the state line or some solution like that comes into play, so that we get something on the island that is exciting and everyone really likes. And that's where I think these conversations about like mechanisms for providing public safety and who funds what and who cleans up what and who's responsible, those really kick into high gear once that first question is settled, which hopefully happens soon. But we're on the right track, I think, and also, once we get to that point, I think it's very doable. I think once the bridges are rehabbed and open, it's to everyone's interest that they be nice and attractive. So that's my 60-second update on where things stand.
Terrific.
I want to thank Oscar for his leadership there, and it started with the shifting the momentum of a very negative current that we were suddenly facing April, May. And it was taking a position which a lot of people in our communities are loath to do. But as a select board member and leader, you stepped up, and I'm going to read your motion just because I find it heartening every time I need a little kick in the pants. Heller motioned that Brattleboro affirm as its official position that the Charles Dana and Anna Hunt Marsh bridges be restored and kept open for pedestrian and bicycle access as described in the Hinsdale Bridge Project Plan, grant application, and interstate agreements. Heller further moved to direct the town manager and Department of Transportation and any other relevant entities to advocate for continued pedestrian and bicycle access across both bridges, and to reopen discussions with the Hinsdale Select Board about a mutually satisfactory resolution to the Hinsdale Bridge project. And I just think that was the monumental move on something that was just slipping into this bizarrely, like I think you said, Wendy, it felt like we were ready to just move, and then all of a sudden things started moving really fast and really negative, and you turned it around. So on July 8th, thank you. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, Friends of Island Park as a group, I'm personally loath to own a bridge. So, we've heard it's been
You haven't done it yet.
I never lost a wink of sleep.
But I'm not loath to own an island. And I think one of the things that we hear is this, I think, fanciful, exaggerated coming apocalypse of, a homeless encampment down there when a number of us did a couple cleanups and there was no emigration problem this year before they put the tape up, despite their claims. So I think eyeballs can make that a really positive place. I think a number of us had visions of going down there and both doing invasive plant management that automatically was going to open up and make it more clear space, and both for safety and just, it's a beautiful spot. George Weir was on our first cleanup, and he came off the island rattling off the diversity of trees down there, and it's actually a bizarrely representative floodplain forest where a lot of our floodplains just aren't anymore. So if we can be helpful as part of that third, I've always believed, 5 years ago, this isn't the town's problem to solve, really. It's a third party. So I think we could pass that as a motion that we would want to be that intermediary, and I think we were formed in the part to play that role if it was helpful. So thank you, and Floyd wants to be that partner to help make it easier. And if we're committed to keeping it not an encampment place and keeping it clean, then the police in town of Hinsdale kind of lose their public safety. Well, it addresses their concerns, I would hope. So.
And we would be a partner to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just want to make that clear.
We would make the island not a burden to them.
Yes.
I would just add parenthetically that July 8th meeting, which I was not able to attend in person, was an awesome TV experience. I was watching it on the internet. And it was just compelling. It was really a wonderful thing to watch and see progress. And of course to know some of the players and the backstory and whatever. It was just really pretty cool.
Especially since the vote went the way it did, right?
What's that?
I said especially since the vote went the way it did.
Yeah. Well, especially, but.
Well, it was exciting to be up there at the table too in the middle of it.
So next steps. I think it's almost 1, so we want to wrap. I have to thank Craig. Mike has already skipped out. It's really nice that Josh came over as a community development person. I think it's been him, Catherine Lynch, the administrator, and their police chief, Melissa Evans, who've been attending a lot of these meetings. So it was great that Josh was willing to come over and spend time with us. I think that the border move is something we should continue to explore as among the possible solutions for addressing, Oscar's motion was, let's look for possible solutions that are mutually acceptable.
Yeah.
And that's all we've ever been asking of Hinsdale and New Hampshire. And I think keeping border move on the table makes sense for solving a lot of the issues. Otherwise, closing remarks from Craig. I think we're going to stay in touch with him. We're all going to visit his URLs to educate ourselves. Wendy's going to write the rec statute change before the December deadline, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, that was enough. Volunteer, yep. And we're going to keep working on making the public as excited as we are until we can get back out there and make it clean and beautiful. So
I'm sure you guys are ahead of me on this, but from my perspective, let's see if we can make that economic study a priority, because I
Yes.
think that would change everything.
Yes.
I think that is
That's it.
that is what will launch if the aggregate number is so large, it's going to be stunning to people. You'll move forward quickly. And it's a little different than normal projects move forward. They go on grants. And nobody does a grant on this subject. So you get the grant done by the correct consultant who's got a good track record. And inside DOTs, believe me, inside DOTs, they look forward to reports done by a select group of consultants. They know that they say if it's a winner, it will be a winner. And so you want to know that. It's not going to be like the Erie Canal Trail, the tall number like that, but it'll be a real number that reflects a good example of marketing that ramps up the number of people coming to visit, including with the train connection here, that this is going to be something that'll help cause a continued renaissance in Brattleboro downtown. And bicycles coming are not a heavy, impactful tourism component. They're very gentle and just like a very good thing to have is just bicycles and pedestrians as coming to visit your community. And what is that worth? That's the big elephant in the room question. Yes.
I think there's also possibly something interesting to be made of the fact that I believe this new Amtrak station is the first fully ADA compliant one in the state.
Yeah.
That's right.
And the bridges are also perfectly flat and people can go out whatever they're rolling on.
Right.
And this is something people might want to keep in mind.
I know that you're up in New Hampshire and Vermont here, and did you know that the Massachusetts stood up a Mass Office of Outdoor Recreation 2 years ago? There's a conference in Greenfield at Greenfield Community College, I think the first week of November or second week. I'll email Jason. It's just, there's a lot of interest in ADA compliant issues and trails for all. Trails for all is a thing, and it's got the right horsepower in terms of political horsepower to move things forward. To have that aspect as part of your trail, an ADA compliant soft surface trail, it's going to be a winner. There will be people coming.
And let me add to, thank you for bringing that up. There are also health benefits and medical benefits to trails.
Yep.
So there's health in terms of physical health, but then we have a lot of people who are, especially older people, who are isolated. And so, and that causes many expensive issues. So if it's possible, I know that's a little bit of a different thing than economic, but that would really help to include that into the study.
Your request for proposal will include the questions you want to have answers.
Perfect. Perfect.
So on the West River Trail, a few months ago, we heard about this handicapped accessible compliance. We had an assessment done of the West River Trail, and we've just received a report of the things we can do to improve the accessibility. So we're beginning to do those right now on the West River Trail. And so we're thinking along those lines. It would be very easy as we're building this component of the trail out to make sure that it has that, because the idea that somebody who might be wheelchair bound or just very limited in their mobility could go out a mile and then they're out on this beautiful railroad bridge to look out over the river, that would be an even better enhancement to the trail, to be able to advertise that and to be able to make that accessible to people who have limitations.
And I would just like to add that historically, Wantastica Mountain is so famous for Brattleboro. It was there, people came to Brattleboro in the horse and buggy days because they could get up there in the trails, and they would go up to the summit. And it's all in the history books of Brattleboro. So even though it's in New Hampshire, and never mind all of the events that went on Island Park, like in 1912 when they, they had a huge thing. So it connects us with what is historically part of who we are here.
So look at it all the time, and it's beautiful.
That's right.
So Betty and Johnny, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you, okay, I saw a hand from our...
Brent Goodwin from Swansea, and I don't want to throw a wrench in anybody's plans. This sounds like an awesome plan. But I haven't heard anybody mention anything about emergency personnel if they have to get out to a bridge or out to an island, if those considerations have been taken. If somebody out there falls, gets hurt, somebody has a heart attack, I mean, those are other issues that might come up before you that you may have to address if you haven't already. But
we have talked about it. We are taking that into consideration, and that is one of the reasons that the redrawing the state line is important, because if it has to be New Hampshire that responds, the nearest New Hampshire ambulance or medical people or fire truck are quite a ways away, whereas the Brattleboro ambulance and fire truck are literally 2 blocks. And making sure that any renovation of that bridge makes it possible for emergency vehicles to get on, as well as have the appropriate authorizations to cross into New Hampshire to provide those services, has been definitely part of the discussion.
It's a requirement of the rehab too, that, so at the moment, that they be to a standard for emergency vehicles. And I don't know whether that's a ladder truck or ambulance.
Because I haven't heard anybody mention that, but I mean,
That's a good point.
No, you're right.
That's a certain possibility.
Yeah, thank you.
You have to get emergency people out there.
We're gonna have a canoe tied up
When you
at the
talk
shore
about
with
the
rescue on it.
possibility that Brattleboro officers could be certified to provide services in New Hampshire, how does that relate to emergency vehicles?
Well, emergency vehicles just need to have a road to go on, right? I mean, they need physical access.
Right, but I guess the question is there a difference between authorizing individual police officers versus authorizing the equipment necessary to support those?
Yes, definitely. My understanding of the way the law works, well, generally you would have a mutual aid agreement between towns, which I expect that we have.
I think we do, yeah.
Right. So that would take care of police and fire and ambulance in terms of just providing access. The issue that has been talked about the most as a matter of concern is for police. Vermont police cannot enforce New Hampshire laws. Vermont police cannot enforce New Hampshire laws. That's a real thing. So what you do is you can get not even just necessarily Vermont police, but other police to take a course that is less than the normal course and be certified by New Hampshire, and then Hinsdale would need to contract with those. So it gets, there's the wonky part, but it's solvable. It's definitely solvable.
There are probably 3 or 4 different mechanisms that we've kicked around for ways to just generally decrease the burden on Hinsdale services. So, yeah, there's a couple different
Right,
options.
and we could just subsidize them. They
That
could
is one of
show
them,
us
yes.
the cost that they incurred, and either the town or FOIP
Private fundraising,
could,
yeah.
or someone could. I mean, there's lots of ways to deal with that.
Thanks for the question.
Yes.
Yeah. We want people safe when they're out there, and the biggest, it's gonna be do we spray for ticks? I'm gonna advocate for spraying for, have you been online?
Skinny heads.
But,
Yes,
I've seen deer on the
Possums.
island.
have you?
Possums eat a ton of ticks.
A former select board member told me we needed to put goats out there to keep things, just permanently.
Yeah.
Sheep.
Or sheep, or, I mean, we'll put out whatever we want.
that would
But
be
yeah,
Goats eat poison ivy
quail
too, which
for
is a major
ticks, I
problem.
think, is so it could get real silly out there.
Yeah.
So we'll need a farmer.
It could be a petting zoo since the trees sold all their animals. So it
That's
could
where
be
your
just
sheep-
a multi-purpose destination. This has been wonderful. I appreciate everybody coming. Thanks again to Craig,
Yes.
our legislator, Senator Harrison. Thank you for making time to be here. Yeah, we need your
Thank you.
continued
No, I'm
leadership
happy.
with us.
Oscar,